67, 68.
Yes.
In 66, I put on a play that Peter Brook did called US, the Royal Shakespeare Company, which I was the director of, which criticised the American action in Vietnam. And I was called to the Lord Chamberlain's office for an after-dinner sherry because they wanted to censor it. Censor still existed.
He gave you a glass of sherry?
Yes, but they didn't know how. So he said to me, do you think it's actually right for a subsidised theatre to do a play about an ally with which we have a special relationship? And I said, if the people who wrote it and who are doing it actually believe in what they're saying, yes, it's called freedom of speech. And he said, I shall be having a word with your chairman. Now that's 50s talk. Fortunately, because it was the 60s, nothing happened because I had a good chairman and the Lord Chamberlain was 2 years later finished.
Yeah, sure.
But I think these
the
are important things.
The Americans pulled out of Vietnam and Pol Pot murdered
That doesn't alter the fact. That doesn't alter the
Cambodia.
fact, Paul, that freedom of speech, information, democratic thinking and charity must always be pursued. They may result in rubbish and nonsense and ideological...
5 million Cambodians are more important than plays at the National Theatre.
Of course they are.
Do you think if the Vietnam War had continued, they wouldn't have been killed? I mean, it seems to me there's a very strange idea of cause and effect here.
I don't know.
I go for freedom of speech on every issue, and I think the 60s record on freedom of speech is pretty bloody marvellous, whatever it may have happened since.
But this brings you to the crisis of morality. I mean, you cannot judge any action by its end. You can only judge it by the quality of the action. Yes. I mean, can it really be true that we don't any longer understand what morality is?
Well, I think that's garbage, of course. Of course, we all think we've got our own code of morality, don't we? Obviously
I'm sure.
we do.
I mean, you were
But it's
talking
always
about
somebody
there being
else,
no
isn't
boundary.
If you talk to people who teach, you know, philosophy of education, they will tell you that it is completely simplistic nonsense to talk about standards of right and wrong. That these things, you know, only the sort of simple-minded will talk about standards of right and wrong, because we're all much more sophisticated now, and we all know that all these things are completely relative. You cannot, for example, teach a child that it is wrong to lie, because if you start thinking about it, you can think of a million circumstances where it would be right to lie. You cannot teach a child that you must always give to other people, because you can think of extreme circumstances, you know, if you're sort of dying in the desert, no water and so on, where it would be quite permissible to bend those rules. So, I mean, the people who are sort of forming the opinions of people who are teaching people who are forming their own opinions is very much this business of moral relativism. It's not that there is no morality, but everyone's morality is as good as everyone else's. There is no common morality anymore.
Surely the truth is that moral decisions have become very much more difficult, because the number of choices facing most people is more sophisticated. Whatever it is, whether it's, you know, what you do with your body, how you decide to construct your family, what kind of sexual expression you will choose, and so on. People have actually got to think hard about their morality now, and they need support in doing that by simply having the open discussion. But I wouldn't say, having taught since 1964, that my students are less moralistic than they were. They're just as moralistic. They're highly moralistic young people. Do you not think?
But it's relativistic morality instead of absolute
So what's
morality.
wrong with that?
No, well, there is a lot wrong with it. That's what Hitler believed in.
I think there
the
was
higher morality of the party.
I think there was a lot.
Absolute morality is dogma. And the absolute morality that we were handed at the beginning of the 60s, whether it was in religion,